Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Convicted killer Scott Peterson is one step closer to getting his new day in court. The hearing to determine if he gets a new trial in the murders of his wife Laci and their unborn son.
All we are trying to do is get at the truth.
And one of R. Kelly's former managers says employees were docked big pay for minor offenses. The singer facing sex trafficking charges in federal court.
What these girls and boys experienced was incredibly traumatic.
Plus, is Robert Durst unraveling under a grueling cross-examination?
Susan's full of
Will the jury believe why Durst says he didn't call the police after finding his best friend shot dead?
I did what I did when I did what I felt I needed to do.
Hey, I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. Convicted wife killer Scott Peterson was back in court this week to discuss scheduling for a hearing that could determine whether he gets a new trial. Law&Crime's Anjanette Levy tells us what happened.
Scott Peterson is a little closer to getting a hearing that will determine whether or not he gets a new trial in the murders of his wife Laci and their unborn son Connor.
Scott Peterson's attorneys and sister-in-law Janie left the courthouse without a date for that evidentiary hearing, but they appeared confident nonetheless.
We believe very strongly that the evidentiary hearing is going to prove what we've said all along, that Scott Peterson did not get a fair trial.
The unresolved question, did juror Rochelle Neese intentionally lie during jury selection and on her questionnaire about being involved in court proceedings? Information unearthed by Peterson's attorneys and prosecutors show that Neese had been the victim of domestic violence while she was pregnant, and she was once the subject of a restraining order issued against her then-boyfriend's ex, things she did not disclose. Neese has stated in court documents she didn't consider herself the victim of a crime. Peterson's lawyers say she couldn't have been impartial.
Every defendant has a right to 12 independent, fair, unbiased jurors.
But in a recent court filing, prosecutors wrote that Peterson's claims, quote, represent a perfect example of what began as a fishing expedition by a litigant who lost at trial. And they referred to his claims as, quote, a witch hunt.
I think the Stanislaus County DA's office using the term witch hunt is a little ironic, given the fact that they have put on a 16-year witch hunt against Scott Peterson.
Meanwhile, one of Neese's fellow jurors maintains her belief in Peterson's guilt did not taint deliberations.
Being a woman and a mother, why would that opinion not be a strong opinion? She didn't in any way influence anyone with her position.
The next hearing in Peterson's case is scheduled for September 22nd. At that time, the judge said she will set a date for that evidentiary hearing, which could last as long as 2 weeks. Judge Anne-Christine Mazzullo said she does not want to hold that hearing in December. That is the month that Laci disappeared. For Law&Crime Daily, I'm Anjanette Levy.
Thanks, Anjanette. Joining us today is criminal defense attorney Mike Correspondent and Terry Austin. Mike, the prosecution is claiming this is a fishing expedition by the defense. Do you agree, or is there merit in arguing for a new trial?
I believe there's merit in arguing for a new trial. I think anytime a juror profits from their job as a juror, writes a book, things of that nature, it causes a major problem in the case, and it shows that they may have not been fully straightforward when they went through their voir dire or the questioning by the counsel. I think they should pass a law that you're not allowed to profit and write books if you're a part of a juror. I think that would really stop this problem, and it's not a witch hunt or a fishing expedition.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I can see that definitely maybe weeding out a lot of these problems. Terry, what kind of testimony and evidence do you expect to be brought into this case if there is a hearing? Could Neese's book with the other jurors be used as evidence?
Absolutely, Brian. We will definitely hear from Neese herself, obviously, but we might hear from the other jurors as well, particularly those who helped with the writing of this book. We might also hear from her mother and her ex-boyfriend, because we know they have information as well, particularly as it relates to whether or not there was a restraining order. So I think we might see them as witnesses. And even if that book is not admitted into evidence, and it'll probably be difficult to establish a foundation and it's hearsay, et cetera, you better believe that the defense is going to be using the information in that book to determine whether or not there was any misjury conduct there. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's a lot of different levels, whether or not she was unbiased and whether or not that might have affected other jurors. Definitely going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a 2-week hearing, as the judges anticipating. So we'll definitely continue that coverage as it continues. Thank you. Turning now to more top legal news, a federal appeals court is upholding the death sentence for the Charleston church shooter. Dylan Roof was sentenced to death for the June 2015 mass shooting at a historic black church. Roof killed 9 churchgoers taking part in a Bible study. In 2017, a South Carolina jury found Roof guilty of 33 charges, including murder and hate crimes. Roof appealed, claiming he was not competent to stand trial and laws were not properly applied to his case. But a 3-judge panel is now ruling that Roof slaughtered the victims while they welcomed him into their Bible study. Quote, he used the internet to plan his attack and using his crimes as a catalyst intended to foment racial division and strife across America. And in California, a grand jury indicted 68-year-old Ron Jeremy on more than 30 counts of sexual assault. The former adult film star is charged for allegedly abusing 21 women over a 23-year span. This includes the time he allegedly raped a 19-year-old girl at a photo shoot. The victims range from 15 to 51 years old, and the investigation remains to be ongoing. Jeremy pled not guilty to all counts, including forcible rape and sexual battery. Now to a shocking turn of events in the Colorado case of missing mom Suzanne Morphew. An unidentified male DNA linked to 3 sexual assaults in 2 states was found in her car. Suzanne Morphew's husband is now accused of murder, but during a pretrial hearing, a Colorado Bureau of Investigation agent confirmed the match during cross-examination by Morphew's defense. The DNA turned up on the glove box of Suzanne Morphew's car. The agent revealed the sample match in a national database to sexual assault cases in Chicago, Illinois, Phoenix, and Tempe, Arizona. A judge is expected to rule at a later date if there's enough evidence for Barry Morphew to stand trial. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, R. Kelly's alleged abuse. Isn't it just the women? His former employees now speaking out. But first, the newly released videos in the death of a 13-year-old apparently killed by a classmate, who was seen running away from the crime scene, and why would a teen film himself in the back of a cop car? The evidence ahead.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTubeTV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back. Florida prosecutors have released the selfie videos of a teen accused of stabbing another teen to death, then taking a video in the back of a cop car. Addon Fucci is accused of murdering schoolmate 13-year-old TRISTYN Bailey. Investigators say Bailey was stabbed 114 times. In newly released surveillance videos, Fucci and Bailey are seen walking together shortly before her death. Police say Fucci is seen about an hour running away by himself. In another video, Fucci is in the back of a police vehicle recording a selfie. He's awaiting trial for first-degree murder. Now to day 7 of R. Kelly's trial, continuing with one of R. Kelly's former employees taking the stand against him. Tom Arnold, R. Kelly's road manager from 2006 to 2011, testified about what it was like working for R. Kelly all those years. Arnold testified sometimes appearing shaky and nervous about the 20-plus people who worked for R. Kelly, including security guards, bus drivers, audio engineers, and others. And how this network of employees, including him, had pieces of paper with R. Kelly's number on it that they would hand to girls at R. Kelly's request. Arnold also testified he had R. Kelly's phone and would answer it for him. He identified some of the women R. Kelly would have at his house and detailed the layout of the Olympia Fields, Illinois home, and the fact that even when they weren't on tour with 3 to 6 buses, that one would stay on the property, and R. Kelly and females would often stay inside. Arnold continued by describing working for R. Kelly, the docked pay for minor infractions, the rules about leaving a room if a girl was in it, or that the girls would need permission to leave the studio. He also described that he quit when R. Kelly got mad. He booked a male tour guide for a VIP tour of Disney World, and his pay was docked that week. Let's bring back criminal defense attorney Mike Correspondent and Terry Austin. Terry, when I listen to Arnold's testimony, it screams RICO, like the prosecution is setting up to connect the dots. Do you see that too? And how will they do that?
I definitely see that. Tom Arnold is the perfect witness for this RICO allegation. He's the 12th witness on the stand, but he was the one who is able to put this whole racketeering case together by establishing this enterprise. And the enterprise here in Kelly's case is all of his employees, the managers, the bodyguards, the drivers of the cars. And as you said, he testified that all of them had telephone number for Kelly and that they were instructed to give out the telephone number to various girls and women. And so that's part of luring these women in and getting them to participate in this sexual ring. And he was very important in that regard. And he also said that he wasn't able to look at female employees, none of the other, or rather female guests, none of the employees were able to do that. And he solidified the fact that these women had to act in a certain way. So he was great for the RICO charge.
Now, Mike, let's play a little devil's advocate because you and I make a living off of proving prosecutors wrong. Is having your friend pass out your number the beginning of RICO charges? Because if it is, you should stop handing out mine.
Well, I just, hold on, here's Brian's number. But Brian, seriously, what they are doing, I think is very dangerous because whatever Kelly did in the privacy of his own time, these people were not hired specifically to do that unless they could prove they were. These people had real jobs and he was a major corporation. I do think sometimes federal prosecutors use the RICO statute, which you only need probable cause to charge, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Because once you have a RICO case, it really broadens the hearsay rules of evidence, and things that may be double hearsay, triple hearsay are admissible if it's furtherance of the RICO. So I think that's another strategy they use. And we're sort of seeing that in the Durst case, although that's not a RICO case, but that kind of hearsay comes in.
Interesting to see how that'll play out, not just for the trial, but any potential appeals that might come up afterwards. Thank you both. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, would Susan Berman talk to investigators about her best friend? What Robert Durst has to say. Plus, the woman testifying against R. Kelly, we speak with a psychologist about the trauma of taking the stand and what's next for them after this trial. Stay with us. We're back. One by one, women are taking the stand against R. Kelly, alleging decades of abuse, rape, and forced abortions. Terry Austin spoke with a clinical psychologist about what these women can do now that they're out of his alleged control.
Brian, I spoke with Dr. Catherine Coleman about what she believes it will take for these women to heal, both psychologically and emotionally.
One thing that's really important for these victims to keep in mind is that this was not their fault. An abuser will make it seem like the victims were at fault here, that they were groupies, that they wanted this, that it was consensual, that there was some bigger purpose that they were doing this for. And they're going to ask themselves a lot of the same questions that we're being asked of why did they continue to stay despite all of this? And it's going to be really important for them to have that education about, the cycle of abuse and what that looks like. And truly, what these girls and boys experienced was incredibly traumatic. And so it's going to be important for them to recognize they're not at fault and to seek some help so that they can, go on to live a robust and meaningful life.
I've seen comments that people are blaming even the parents. What can a parent do to sort of avoid this to happening to one of their children?
I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up. I was listening to a podcast about this the other day, specifically about a family member of one of the girls who, somebody brought it up to them that R. Kelly was abusing their family member, and they didn't want to believe it at first. I think, for most people, we tend to believe that people are good and that they have, pure hearts and that they're willing to help. Family members may have seen R. Kelly as this person that was going to pull their family out of poverty. Remember, a lot of these victims, nearly all were people of color. Many came from low socioeconomic status households, and this was their family's ticket to to success and some freedom and to some financial freedom. So this was a huge deal for them. And so why would you want to believe that something so horrendous was happening to your family member?
That's an excellent point. So finally, I'm thinking about all of this testimony that's coming in about R. Kelly's behavior. Do you think that he experienced in the past some psychological trauma or some psychological issues that he's dealing with?
Typically, what you'll see with people who commit this type of abuse is that there's something in their past, right? Because something had to make them think to even do this in the first place. And so you have to wonder where that came from. Was that past abuse? Gosh, I've never seen a movie that forced people to eat feces. So you do wonder where that comes from. These are pretty significant paraphilias and fetishes that's beyond, dominant, submissive type of consensual relationships that you'll sometimes see in adults. So it's really quite sickening. And so it's difficult to fathom that there is not something there.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Catherine Coleman. We appreciate your being here, and we can't wait until you're on again next time on Law and Crime.
Anytime.
Thank you, Terry. R. Kelly's trial will be dark on Friday and is set to resume Monday. When we come back, Robert Durst is back on the stand in California. What the real estate heir has to say about his now dead best friend, Susan Berman. Was she willing to go to authorities? The testimony next. Welcome back. We're looking to California, where Robert Durst has been under a grueling cross-examination for more than 40 hours. Robert Durst is on trial for the murder of his best friend, Susan Berman. Durst now admits to discovering Susan's body in her Benedict Canyon home and says he quickly fled the scene. Instead of calling the police, Durst sent the infamous cadaver note in hopes that it would lead authorities to her body. In an intense line of questioning during cross-examination, Durst claims that he didn't call the police when finding Susan's body because the phone didn't work. That quickly unraveled in the hands of John Lewin.
Your intention was to call 911 right at that time, correct?
Correct.
So the only reason that you did not call 911 is the phone did not work, correct?
Correct.
So why didn't you immediately run next door to a neighboring house and try to get help?
I didn't.
I didn't ask you what you did, Mr. Durst. We know what you did. I asked you why you did not do that. Do you have an explanation?
I keep having to come up with these explanations. I did what I did when I did what I felt I needed to do.
Shocking admissions in front of the jury, but after they left the courtroom for a break, the judge expressed his need to wrap up Durst's testimony, telling the prosecutor why he thinks Lewin has more than adequately questioned Durst on cross.
I would think the following is true. First of all, the defendant's testimony was not credible. Secondly, on day one, it appeared that you really effectively destroyed any possible credibility of this witness. On day three, I believe, by day three, I think you had very, very serious, I would even say profound admissions. Day four, day five, you're going through each of his statements to prove that every statement is false. Every statement he has made, it seems you're addressing, and you're right. I think at some point there's a limit. It doesn't seem there's any further purpose. It seems additional questioning would be an undue consumption of time.
Now, Durst is admitting that his best friend was keen to telling stories and volunteering information. But Durst is rebutting the prosecution's theory of the case, arguing Susan wouldn't have been found credible if questioned by New York prosecutors about the disappearance of his wife, Kathy.
I might be charged with murder by Janine Pirro, but I don't think Susan would have had whatever Susan said had anything to do with it, because if Janine Pirro had an investigator actually interview Susan, he would conclude that Susan's full of
That it wouldn't really matter whether Susan was, quote, full of You would be up creek because your situation would be that your best friend is telling investigators you murdered your wife and she covered it up, correct?
To follow the question.
Mike, I get it. Lewin wants to prove that every word, every syllable, every breath out of Durst's mouth is a lie. But at some point, we get it. Durst is a liar. Is it time for Lewin to move on?
It is. I mean, it's just the repetition, and I think he's got a lot to work with, but, you know, the jury wants to hear it in a neater way. They want to hear the facts, then they want to hear you comment and put the facts together based on your argument. I think they're doing a lot on this cross of both of those things, and it's going to get lost on the jury. I think the judge may be doing him a favor.
Yeah. Now, Terry, the defense may or may not put on another witness. I've heard maybe an Asperger's expert, then rest. Do you think the prosecution needs to at this point or will put on a rebuttal case?
Well, actually, even though Lewin has gone ad nauseum with his questioning of this witness, we do think that there should be a rebuttal. At least I think there should be a rebuttal. I definitely think that he should call, and he's indicated it as much. They've agreed that Andrew Jarecki will come on by video as a rebuttal witness, and I think that's extremely important, and it's important because we know that Durst has relied repeatedly on saying that Jarecki was the one who told him to say all of these statements. And so I think it's important that we call Jarecki. And we might also see Douglas Durst come back up on the stand to rebut some of the things that Durst has said. So I definitely think that Lewin is going to take this opportunity to do more of his case and maybe show where there were more lies by Durst. And, you know, we know Lewin, he's not going to rest right here if the law allows him to have additional speaking time. And I think he'll come up. And frankly, I think in these instances, he should.
Hey, I think Lewin has won already. I would be afraid of someone in the jury catching COVID and maybe a mistrial because of that, but that's just me. Thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.